Alright, fellas, so this time around, I'm not going to talk about anything related to finance, but what I'm going to talk about is basically school. This video goes out to the gamers who are currently in college or in high school. Um, so the topic is essentially surviving through school, and the lessons learned that I learned throughout my, 7+ years in college is time management, money management, and essentially protecting your peace. There's a lot of toxicity out there. There's a lot of negatives that's always hitting you, whether it be through personal friends, strangers that you meet, or just life just hits you in the face. There's always something out there that prevents you from just being, doing, and essentially trying to be successful, right? There's always something out there that prevents you from doing that. So, uh, there's not going to be a particular order that I'm going to be covering this, but what I am going to start with is your first 2 years in college, right? What happens? What do you do? And who do you meet? So what happens is essentially you're getting your GEs out the way. There, if you're not really that kind of person who wants to be studious, who wants to learn, then these classes will essentially be boring for the most part, or even more boring than what your major is. And if you don't know your major, then that's just pretty tough. But the good thing is that people want people should teach or should learn subjects that will pay them high yields in the future. Want something that pays you dividends throughout your life, right? And it's pretty hard to do because we like to follow our passion. We like to study things that are important to us. Essentially, what I'm saying here is to earn enough money in the future so you can justify doing things on the side that you like to do, right? So what happens in college in the first 2 years is that it's boring. You get to meet new people. You start to understand yourself and who you are, and what you like and what you want to keep away from. Right. What you do is or who you meet. Well, it starts small, right? You start learning, or you start to understand how to approach certain people in your classroom. It could be a female or a guy. It could be making friends. Essentially, what I'm saying here is that you start off shy, it starts off weird, but remember, the other person is more than likely open to make friends too for two reasons. One, because it's college, why not? And two, um, that person could be a good study buddy in the future, right? Especially when classes get tough. So that's what happens in the first year or two. You start to know yourself. You start to develop those social skills. You start to become a little bit more risk uh, uh, I forget what's the opposite of risk adverse, but essentially you're a risk taker. You want to talk to people, get to meet your professor, and know how to talk to this person. And yeah, you may be joining sororities or frats. You may be joining clubs. That helps you. That will definitely push your experience social points positively at the cost of time. Right. I remember when I was rushing for a bit when I was in my third year in college, my time was pretty much divided into multiple spaces. I It was a good learning experience, but I could have done without it. I didn't successfully rush and join a club. The events that led up to the I guess the final like interviews or whatever. I just I don't know. I felt more comfortable, which is bad, right? It felt more right, I should say, working, studying, and just dedicating my time to that. I guess I wasn't ready to do things socially, but that's a different topic. Years 3 and 4, you should already have at least a tutoring job or a job on the side. And from my personal opinion, if you're getting enough uh, um, of a Cal grant, which is here in California, or enough financial aid, then you could let off on, or you could postpone learning how to handle a job, but it's more important to one, earn your own money, knowing how that feels. Two, money management. It feels good splurging, but it's more painful to pay off that big credit card bill at the end. I always tell people here in my channel to be responsible when it comes to credit card use. Always 30% of your total credit card limit in order to keep your credit score high. And why do we want it high? To justify a home loan in the future. Car loans too for people who want it, but I wouldn't want to take I wouldn't take a car loan out if you're barely starting, especially with no cash and in debt. But anyways, that's a whole different story. Uh, so yeah, that's what happens in third or fourth years. You should be able to handle a part-time job. You should be applying and cleaning up your resume for those corporate jobs that we all um, most likely want to strive for. I believe that's the ultimate goal of college to to get a job. Right. You go through college, you go through the crazy life, you go through the studious life, you go through ups and downs, X, Y, disease, your time being pulled left and right. That's perfectly fine. That's kind of what you want instead of a boarding college. But the at the end of the road, you want to have a corporate job, right? And how do we get that? We start by gaining enough experience, whether it be at work, social settings, but essentially building up how to speak like the people that you will be surrounded by, and how to pretty much not be alone. And it's kind of hard. Common sense isn't as common, but essentially what I'm saying here is that if you want to be successful in your interviews, speak like how the hiring manager is speaking. You need to have coherent logic or coherence and a certain level of flow that persuades them, without you telling them specifically that you are competent, you are knowledgeful, and most importantly, the person for this job, right? But of course, more on that in a different video. Essentially, what I'm saying here in your third, fourth year, you should be applying the job. You should be acing your interviews or practicing to be a better interviewer or interviewee. You should have a part-time job. You should be on top of your studies and health. I think health is definitely high up there that many people sleep on. The gym is definitely a good starting point, but if you have enough rest, enough sleep when you're supposed to be sleeping, then everything else that comes in the next day will be a breeze. You have the energy, you have the time, you won't feel sluggish or slouchy when the times get going the very next day. So so what happens after college? I think this is definitely a different video, but essentially what happens here is that you either still interviewing and jobless, or you have a job. So the first one was my experience. I went straight to the master's program when I finished my bachelor's. So because my GPA was really strong, my school basically paid for my studies, which is the ideal scenario, right, for everybody here. You want to be paid to do what you like, and what I liked back in the day was to study. I was still interviewing. It was still rather unsuccessful, but after 7 months of having graduated and a full semester in the graduate program, I got my first gig. It was okay. It wasn't corporate, but it was still something. It was still something that I could use to, or it's something that I can use as a stepping basis to push to the next levels, and that I did about a year later from my hiring time. But I was juggling tutoring because I was a tutor back in the day. I was now handling. Oh, I was tutoring. I was also warehousing to pay off for my, I guess, splurges and to save money to get a head start in life. Um, so I was tutoring. I was warehousing when I got my first legitimate job. Um, if you want to put it like that. And then yeah, I had three jobs essentially. On top of that, I was doing graduate work, graduate studies, and it was a pain in the butt. I am not going to lie to you, my time was so divided, was so strained or constrained. It was just hell. But I survived it. I was able to justify certain vacations after a certain level of output or work that I put into pretty much this time of my life, and yeah, I felt good. But yeah, so what happens in your graduate studies, right? Graduate studies is essentially the space where you get to meet people who are there to also learn, or who are there just because they kind of have to. Um, or who are there who or people who are there to push towards like the doctor level. That's a whole different story. Or a whole different type of people or person to even fathom trying to get to that space. But anyways, the people that I met were essentially those who were my peers back in the bachelor's, so we kind of already knew each other. But essentially, the people you meet in graduate school, more serious people, more people who already know what they're doing, kind of, or at least portray. Because essentially, a lot of people don't know what they're doing. They're just going through life, just I guess whispering in the wind, if you know where that's from. But it was pretty cool. I like my graduate peers. I like myself. I like the studies and the hell that I went through when it comes to juggling my time for work, for my studies, and of course, brushing on my resume again with new experience to justify corporate level job that I got a bit later. But yeah, year 4 through 5 and pushing towards 6 and 7. You're actually no, hold on. 5 to 6, right? 5 to 6 is my graduate is graduate studies for me, and it was cool. Um, I took exams to graduate instead of a thesis, even though I was doing thesis level work. I just did my exams because oh because my last semester in the graduate program I got my first corporate job, and I've been there ever since. It's cool. But anyways, to my point, instead of doing a thesis, I just did the exams because I already had my corporate job. I wanted to leave and graduate. My last semester in the graduate program was freaking hell. Like I was able to quit my tutoring job, which I feel like I shouldn't have. I did quit my other after college job for the new one, right? And then I wasn't warehousing for a while, but for a good minute, for like a good month or two, I was warehousing and I just had 3 jobs, and it was a pain in the ass. But sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, right? But yeah, and then now what happens in the corporate life? In the corporate life, it's a whole different setting. You're in a whole different echelon. You're no longer with your companions. You no longer feel that, oh, okay, I've been here forever, so like now I get the gist of it. I'm talking about academia. You know how like you spend enough time in a certain place, you feel like, oh, okay, like I get the role, right? And you start to look or feel uh, superior, to say the worst, when the new freshmen or the years below you start to roll in, right? So all of that crap disappears. Now you're in the real world, right? You're working a corporate job, you put in 50 to 60 hours when it comes down to it, and you're dealing with people who have massive egos, I should say. You're dealing with people who have massive egos, or people who are just morons. It's just how it is. And my experience has been more positive than negative. I like to save this content for a different video, but essentially what I'm trying to say here is that life after college is where things get real. Your time and you are not adhered to like a certain time frame, or a certain level of organization that you are used to. You transition from academia to your career, and that's where it gets a bit scary because all you've known this entire time is just learning. All you've done is just open up a book, memorizing, trying to understand it, and you get an exam, right? In corporate world, it's not like that. At least 30 to 40% of it is, in terms of like you read an SOP, you figure out how to do your work, and then your exam is basically presenting your findings to the group project. And if they like it, cool. If they want to change the scope of it, then you kind of screw it because you gotta do everything all over again. But anyways, that's kind of how it is. Um, and yeah, so life after college is definitely a scary one. It's kind of hard to, I don't know. You just have to experience it for yourself. It gets scary after a while because you lose yourself in work. If you have like a strong social life outside of school and work, then that is your point to just have fun and de-stress, unwind. But it gets repetitive. You want something else, and then you start to get lost, and then you start to get screwed. You need something to help you push towards a certain goal. So, smaller goals that pushes you towards your bigger goal. Because we all have that main goal in our minds, but we have to think about it in terms of what should we do? What tinier goals can we strive for or strive to push us to the next to our main goal, right? And that's pretty much the theme of this. The point of my conversation for this video is just to you go through these years, and then you have a finish line at the end, and your objective is to create smaller goals that pushes you to the next level. And next level is daunting. This next level echelon you should be proud of, since you justified yourself to be there. Maybe bullshitted, but still you are in a certain way or a certain level because you have earned it. And then now pushing towards a blind cave, a blind road, no lights, no direction. You just gotta keep walking and hope that you reach a certain point, and you will get lost, and you will want to return or walk back. But you can't do that. There's no way back. There's no return. You're losing time. So just keep pushing forward. And if you see a certain level of progress in terms of monetary, in terms of knowledge, in terms of career, then you know you're doing something right. But something will always fall off. Alright, fellas, that's pretty much all I want to talk about right now. Again, if you guys want to listen to me more on financial topics about academia, and yeah, I'm gonna continue producing videos just because it's a good way for me to vent, to get my ideas out there, and if people want to listen and like it, then that's cool with me. Alright then, fellas, later.
Hostiles have eyes overhead.
Enemy UAV inbound.
Eyes on enemy. Carrying Semtex. Got their long gun.
Enemy napalm strike incoming. Hardpoint identified.
Sending a Semtex. Troops in contact.
Hardpoint active. Hostiles have the hardpoint.
Semtex